There's tons of that goes back to the McCain presidency, presidential run. So that seed is there. That mechanical seed is there. The reality, however, it being a genuine political movement, genuine political agenda is sort of absurd. It's more of a gripe fest. What Donald Trump's entire political backing is effectively the realm of YouTube and Twitter trolls. It is a troll party. No real base on how they intend to do any of the things they want to do. No real concept of where that idea, those ideas hit the road and actually manifest in any policy. And I've had this gripe for a long time about sort of the libertarian wing of the Republican Party and the Libertarian Party in many ways themselves. The idea that you can't be that anti-government and actually run for a government post. It's absurd on a massive level. I believe that libertarianism, in many ways, is an interesting way of running your own life, your own sense of personal freedom, of personal growth, of I believe that I stand on my own and I will leave a standard for myself therein. But once you broaden that out into a society, it falls off. There's a low return on investment at that point. Societies are a lot more complex than Paul Ryan's muscle confusion. And that's where it runs aground as a political movement, and often has. And the reality behind similar ideology when it comes to, let's say, the Occupy movement, which an extraordinarily important vocal movement, certainly from a left point of view, that there was no real measurable ramifications of the Occupy movement that weren't already kind of in the works. And so it ended up being a camp out and a complaint. But because of lack of centralized leadership of a long-term plan, it never really had the impact, and it's a shame, that it could have. Unlike the Black Lives Matter movement, which I think learned a lesson from the Occupy movement. And then you've got people like D. Ray McKinnon, who are running for the mayor of Baltimore on effectively a Black Lives Matter kind of ticket, that kind of idea. Learning from the Occupy movement and going, okay, how do we actually turn this into a governing principle change where you can to the Occupy movement, which fortunately or unfortunately has bled into Trump followers, that there's this crossover crowd of Trump and Sanders followers that effectively actual base at and concern itself with governing the Republicans as a front, meaning social issues and the illusion of working with working class white people. That's out the window. Right now, what you have on the Republican side is a cult of personality versus 5 people vying to be the last guy off the boat. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're also going to talk about the debate this week between Hillary and Bernie. I thought there were criticisms and praise to be had on both sides, which is the sign of a good debate about actual policy. I think there are strengths and weaknesses, and I want to hear from you about your feelings about the Sanders-Clinton debate this week. I don't care who you thought won. That doesn't make any sense to me, because these days, without a complete trouncing or the other person blacking out on the podium, the supporters of any particular candidate these days, and this is true of Democrats and Republicans, don't seem to sway too much. And, that's been consistent for quite a while. On the Republican side, there's increased entrenchment around individual candidates, and the only time there's any shift is when candidates bail out. Where will that vote go? And we'll talk a little bit about that. I'd love to hear people's opinions on where they think the Christie vote's going to go. I don't know that, and I'm even blitzing on his name right now, the sort of last straggler of the Republican Party that ditched out as well this week, that he has any votes to spread around at that point. But I'm curious to see where those go. Obviously, Marco Rubio is the target of choice. He's the low-hanging fruit of being able to be knocked out of the race. We will see if that actually happens, or if the rumors of outing him for behavior will be the last-ditch effort to take him out. 773-763-9278 is our number. I'd love to hear from you guys about the debate this week. Points you thought were made, things you were glad were raised. I have my own chip on my shoulder about a couple of areas, namely in the foreign policy area, where I thought there was unforced errors on both sides. I think Sanders' lack of foreign policy almost at all is very concerning, although I think he's open to good advice. So I think that softens that blow a little bit. We just don't know where that advice is coming from and how knee-jerk, if you're not that well-versed on what's going on, how knee-jerk you take that advice, because then it ends up being like a caucus instead of a vote. And Hillary Clinton's embracing of Henry Kissinger, which I thought was peculiar and not necessarily healthy. And I think more attributes to his age than what he's actually done in his life, which I'm not a fan of. Well, I would love to hear 773-763-92. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Parks Radio program.
Supporters and Donald upcoming Democrat debate.
Okay, great.
So you want to take it in that order?
Yeah,
or
that's great. Yep, absolutely.
know which one you want to take? Okay, cool.
Yep. If that makes sense. It helps. Work its way out a little bit. There we go.
A minute.
Mm-hmm. Welcome back to the show. We have some callers already. I think the first one we have up is Steve from the Gold Coast. The Republican field. Steve, I've been watching this group. What's your take on that there? Do we have him?
Well, that's what it were.
Yeah.
And until it not gauge exactly where this process stood, until we got rid of a lot of the people who, quite frankly, didn't stand a chance.
Right.
Now the question becomes, where do their votes go?
Mm-hmm.
Can they just simply endorse another candidate, as Rick Santorum attempted to do? Do those people just sit on the sidelines? Do they have a second choice? We're talking about people who at 1%, 2%, 3%. In this whole effort, to get a percentage of the people out there vote and participate. So, the question: Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, establishment versus outsiders, and that's what Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump share, in that they are both outsiders. They appeal to people who are disenchanted with a chance to a few $1,000s per Iowa. He can't see where any traction. So, this question of we're going into South Carolina, and then we've got a bunch of other states that are coming up. So we're still sort of early in this process. I mean, if you look back historically, there are people who have won these early states, and they became footnotes in history. So we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. We've still got a long way to go, and it's still very process. So let's give it another month, and let's see who's left standing, shall we say. Voting process up to and it is that's the Donald Trump supporters don't seem to care, no matter what sort of idiotic makes,
right,
no matter what experience or shall we say education he has, and his responses seem to care. They're thoroughly convinced. We just need some guy who's a billionaire, and because he's a billionaire, he must be able to be president. Do any worse than what we currently have.
Sure. It of a form of early, like, Dark Ages. God has favored this man.
Exactly.
Yeah, and there's certainly a internet versions of them, not the actual boots on level of shenanigans exist, meaning that Republicans have fancied call centers posing as liberals who are going, but I don't. And you see them running call banking around these and Facebook posting and all that stuff. And it's an outsource you can do, nearly product, and politics is product. So I appreciate the call, Steve. Let's grab one more call. Who do we have?
Ohio. Running candidates, when it all comes to the top.
Yeah,
Kasich
I mean, in
that's his
a
name,
just
and
universe, I think there's an element where Kasich is the best guy to run on the Republican side, and I'm not a fan of his politics overall, but he is the one who seems to want to govern from that philosophy as opposed to just run on panic and xenophobia. Floats at that point. I mean, he's in fourth place in this regard.
Well, they come closest to the center.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to votes from public is of yeah, wow, I did that. But
Yeah.
with everything that's going on and everything that I happen to know that I can't really talk about, your doubts about a lot of things. But he seems to be taking the country. I mean, I'm left to Sanders as far as things go, but.
Certain issues. Left of Bernie that he's taking to the left of her on Wall Street. I think both are bold in modern politics. Proud of both. If we could fuse these two candidates into one, it'd be a win-win. There's no question. So, anyways, I appreciate the call, and I'm glad you called the Super Bowl. I hope you had money on it for your own financial benefit and your retirement goes well. Let's take a break. We'll be back. It's the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Yeah. Well, the $8 billion for the wall number is a construction number. I think that more than anything is kind of amazing. From a practical standpoint, you've got a guy who's a real estate developer running for president, and when he quotes the numbers on his wall, what he's quoting is the physical cost of building it. The amount of legal issues around what side of the border it will be on, and therefore what land it's encroaching on, and how much room there is, and any number of shipping and trucking elements there have to be, like all the secondary aspects of building a giant border wall are not factored into that $8 billion. And then just wait till the Texas farmers who want their free labor, borderline slave labor, undercut pay. See how they go. Yeah, Tom, that's the big thing is with control of the House being as it is, and the anonymous hold being a factor when in regard to. I realized the stream just came back up. When I was talking about Tom's statement. Getting the agenda through, how you actually manage to do it, is incredibly important. I think I know it was a great. I'll talk about that when I come back.
1 minute.
Thank you.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back. I also, by the way, got into a lovely, a couple of Bernie Bros style, troll attacks this week, and some of you may have noticed it on my Twitter feed at Hal Sparks that I got in a bit of a dust up with Randy Rhodes, who I respect and have been on her show. I love Randy. My only issue with how she addressed something was that I put out a thing called the Hal Sparks Daily. It's an aggregate newspaper. It's done by software that follows everybody that I follow and then takes the articles, pictures, videos, things they post and organizes them into a newspaper so that, you can kind of get, I did it initially for myself as a way of, weeding through all the stuff I follow and making, especially the video and articles that I might want to read stand out. And then I released it to the public in case anybody else wanted to subscribe to it. And you certainly can through my Twitter feed. One of the articles was from Jonathan Capehart about this picture that's circulating that was reported to be Bernie Sanders initially at a sit-in. And then it turned out it was this young man named Rappaport who was friends with Bernie in the actual picture, and they were largely indistinguishable. Then Time magazine later said, oh, it is him actually. We were mistaken. During that time, in between the reporting that it was actually Rappaport and we were mistaken, Jonathan Capehart wrote an article saying, stop sending me a picture of sending me this picture as proof that Bernie Sanders cares about the issues. It's immaterial, and it's not even him. That got posted in my daily because it's part of the feed, as did an article by Randy. She noticed it because it linked to her and addressed me essentially without any other explanation with a direct tweet that just said cut the crap, which I had to actually fish for a while to know what she was talking about because, quite frankly, I say a lot of crap on my Twitter feed. A good portion of it is comedy, so I can't tell what anybody might be offended by or upset at. And I'm certainly comfortable with clarifying anything that's a mistake or standing by anything that I believe that you just don't like. I don't have a problem with that. So it boiled down to, it was the posting of Jonathan's article that she viewed as, manipulation of the electorate on my part or some such. And you can see the whole thing play out if you want to read it on the Twitter feed. I don't want to characterize any of it. You can draw your own conclusions. And I have no issue whatsoever with, I have no dog in the fight of whether he was in a picture or not. I don't question he nor Hillary's bona fides when it comes to the civil rights movement. Both of them care very deeply about these issues. It has no bearing heart-wise on my vote for either one of them. My question is, how do you actually help? How concern? I think we have two people who care very deeply on that side. Meanwhile, on the Republican side, while the Democrats are trying to gather every black vote they can possibly get and really stand tall on issues like Black Lives Matter and income inequality and injustice that the black community deals with at a statistically higher rate than the white community, no matter where you are. in the country, the Republicans are running from the black vote as if it's cooties, and having sort of having Ben Carson or a couple of other conservative black people speaking on behalf is not the equivalent of actually courting the vote and caring very deeply about making a difference in those lives. So that's been the fallback on the right, saying, well, we've got 3 black people here, and they agree with us, so therefore we're not. Meanwhile, every dog whistle that the right can come up with, and some of them, quite frankly, have put down the dog whistle and are just blowing a gym whistle. The anti-Semitism from Ted Nugent and the continued embracing of him. And by the way, I applaud members of the NRA who've stood up against that. I think it proves that the NRA is not a monolithic group, and that a lot of hunters in there that are involved in the NRA have good hearts and don't want things like assault weapons, don't have any problem whatsoever. And this shows up in the polling time and time again with extended background checks and all that stuff. So, that being said, the Republicans, the stark contrast is something I think on the Democratic side we can be very proud of. That while there's a definite fight between the Sanders and Clinton campaign that is quite harsh at times, the baseline reality is both candidates agree on 99% of things. It's just how. And so the argument will boil down to how in the end. And over the course of continued debates and continued campaigning, I think that's ultimately where we as Democrats are lucky enough to be able to draw that our conclusions based on who's got the method, right? And on the Republican side, however, they seem to be going the exact opposite direction. That the more a person comes up with a how, with a reasonable plan, the more apt the voters themselves are to distance themselves from that actual person. It doesn't actually boil down into one of the qualifying factors for president on the Republican side. Right now, we are strictly talking about a language without any backup whatsoever, and that's why I think Trump is securing himself a certain segment of the Republican. It's because everything he says is it's irreducible. You can't actually break it down to anything. You can't go, well, this will fall apart until he attaches a number to it. The Wall is a great example of that. I think, quite frankly, the best interview with Donald Trump that I have seen in this entire unfolding was Tamron Hall this week. She confronted him on things in a way that allowed him this protected ego space, which is incredibly important to him. And made him actually give a number for the first time, how much it will cost. She backed him into a corner on 2 issues and still held him to it. They ran out of time with literally his people waving at her to not ask him any more questions because they're afraid he's going to answer them. She even called out his people on the air, tell your people to calm down, tell them to chill out. Because they were trying to bail him out of an increasingly damaging interview that he was being suckered into, because Tamron Hall is a smart, beautiful woman. And whereas smart is his real Achilles heel, beauty also affects him. And that's why he got baited and he's now angry about Megyn Kelly. I think Tamron Hall did an amazing job and very smartly controlled what is, in many ways, a dodge candidate. So anyways, more of your calls. Let's grab another call. I think we have one on the line. Do we not, Lady B?
Yes, we do. We have Donald.
Excellent. Welcome to the show, Donald. Unless it's ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump joining us on this. It's a different Donald. How are you?
Can you hear me, Hal?
I can, absolutely. Welcome.
Hello?
Yeah, there you are. Can you hear me? I can hear you.
Yes,
you are.
I can. I'm wondering if you're talking to the right Donald.
Absolutely. I'm talking to this Donald, who is the only Donald I would talk to, by the way, in this equation. I have no words for Mr.
Maybe
Trump.
Two
Yeah.
of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I have some hand gestures for him at this point, but I really don't think that linguistically there's any yardage to be gained in talking to the man. That being said, go ahead.
All right. I was a Bernie supporter until I started listening to the actual debates that they were having.
Mm-hmm.
And Hillary Clinton, she made some excellent points, and she was more realistic in her ideas. She came out and said, I'm not going to promise you anything that I can't
deliver,
give you, but I want to give you the things that are reachable right now.
Mm-hmm.
And she's right about that, given the fact that the political climate in Washington mostly is controlled by the Republican Party. She's going to do all she can to even improve things, especially when it comes to health care.
Mm-hmm.
But Bernie Sanders, he goes ahead in these health care and even student loans and everything. She's going the same direction that he's going too, but she's doing it in a more reasonable way. He's literally promising the world without any kind of indication what it's going to really take. He seems to think that he's going to be reaching across the aisle and going to be working with these people. It's not going to happen.
Yeah,
because he did.
Did you see the debate, by the way? Did you watch this one, the most recent one?
Yes, I did.
I thought the sort of question about race relations under a Sanders administration would be better than they were under the Obama administration was I thought it was an odd question in some ways, but I also thought the answer was odd from Sanders. I've said this all along. I think the sexism under a Hillary Clinton presidency will have the same arc of resurgence the way racism has happened under Obama. Like they come out of the woodwork. And by the way, I think the same aspect of anti-Semitism would also be a factor if Sanders was president. So the idea that somehow race relations would just shift away from black people being the target because they are viewed as favorited by a segment of the most racist among us, in these, especially in the southern white community and the northern, blue collar kind of racist side of the white vote, as it were, would just shift, quite frankly, to anti-Semitism under Sanders, and it would be no different in that regard. The idea that somehow the president is in any way to blame for the circumstance of negative race relations in the country, I find an absurdity, and I find it rude to suggest it.
Yes.
Yeah. And I felt that was an odd way to go.
All we ever do is what absurdities. But what really scares me, Hal, and but before I go on, I want to make sure that this woman that listened to yesterday on Wayne Besson, she accused me of being related to Hillary Clinton because she's heard me on the radio talking about this before.
Okay.
I'm not related to Hillary Clinton in any way.
Okay.
And not only that, there too, but what really frightens me, and I mentioned this several times, is if Bernie wins, she will have the complete backing of Hillary supporters.
Yeah.
I can't say it's going to be that way if it's the other way around. I don't know a lot of Bernie supporters. Matter of fact, I don't know a lot of people that are interested in politics, but my family's all Republican. Mm-hmm. And the few people that I know that want to go for Bernie, they made a comment to me that kind of like made me set me back a bit. They said that if Bernie doesn't get in as the candidate, they're not going to come forward and vote for Hillary. I said, well, Jesus, man, and there's no talking to them,
Right.
They start throwing that business around. Well, the Benghazi and the letters and all this other stuff. But you could add another thing on to Bernie. Since I'm a veteran, one of my fellow Vietnam veterans called in and says, Bernie Sanders was a conscientious objector.
Sure.
And he made a comment saying, which I can't disagree with him, how is a conscientious objector, if we get into a war, what's he going to deal with? Or how is he going to go about handling that sort of thing? Now, as veterans, that is a big thing on a lot of veterans. Not only that, that's another baseball bat that they're going to be putting in the hands of the Republican Party to beat them over the head with. And what we got to do is select the candidate that has the best chance of winning. They're both very well. They're both very good. And I'll tell you, if we don't get a Democratic president in there, it's going to be catastrophic for this country.
I agree. And the down ticket is super important, too. We got to take a break. I appreciate the call. I'll address a little bit of that on the other side, and we'll take more of your calls. 773-763-9278. Thank you, Donald. Yeah, my tolerance for that stuff is quite low.
One minute.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for the musical cue. I was way over on that last one or whatever. On those things, you can, when we get, especially to the half hour, if you want, at 29, you can give me a roll up music wise. That'll help too.
Okay, because I was like, oh my God, he's talking too much.
Yeah. It helps me with the timing, and helps me, gracefully and softly allow the caller in out, as opposed to, that. It's hard to tell them we have a break without it sounding like it's accidental,
Right.
Yeah.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back. Here's the thing. I think we as Democrats agree on the what so often, and then when we have disagreements about the how, in the case of Clinton Sanders situation, if you are a Hillary or a Bernie supporter, and you in any way would avoid voting because one of them is going to be the nominee, then you are exactly the reason why everything you hate happens in government. You are the reason midterms are handed over to people who dial back a woman's right to choose with every stroke of the pen. Every mid-level federal cast a presidential vote that year. Get in that voting booth and vote for everybody else. Because otherwise, you are lazy democracy. And I have no time for you. And go, I can't, if I wouldn't, I'm not even going to vote if it's not them. Is a wall that when you can't together each cycle, stay and have to try and build on the successes you've made and fix the problems that you couldn't. Without that, there is no gain at all. Everything gets erased. Without the actual, the president signing statements at this point late in his presidency have become a necessary evil against the Republican obstruction that's going on in the House and in the Senate. But both those circumstances, both of those houses are in the command of the Republicans right now, largely because of the failure of motivated Democratic and independent voters who actually care about those issues. And you can lay it off as it's a protest non-vote, but my response to you in that circumstance is go to hell. It's no excuse. None. If you can be involved in this primary or caucus effort, then absolutely get out and do it. If you can't, it's understandable, but throw your support behind the ideas and the plans of the candidate you support. And I don't just mean the presidential. But once it comes down to actually voting next year, to cast a vote because they don't pass some sort of purity test, and that's going to keep you out of the voting booth, you're the problem, not the solution. This is a democracy, and the value is the act of the themselves. You do not hand public, let somebody else take control of this. And then be surprised when they shut down every clinic in your state. Be surprised when you can't get even the most widely accepted gun regulations through. Why you can't get simple background checks nationally. You're upset at this every time we have a school shooting and we have to go through this again, but you won't be motivated to go out and vote because Hillary doesn't pass some sort of purity test or Bernie's supporters are jerks. It's not a reason. Of commitment on our insanity. Self, if you've ever let the word pass your lips, I just feel like I need to vote and blah, blah. It's absurd. And anybody who says it, by the way, know that I hear you as a troll or an operative. And the other argument, the clown car Republican side, these case increasingly hard to say there's no difference between. But if you say there's, like Paul Weyrich, that the fewer people show up, or that you personally I'm just reading you guys from the chat just to, you know.
One minute.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Fuss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome back to the show. So on our side, I'm very happy to have both of our presidential candidates, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. I'm incredibly proud of both of them as emblems of policy and of people who've made it through the system. I think there is no way that both of the things that they get mocked for don't happen if you look at the path they came up through. That both of these people are emblematic of the very fight they have carried out. Sanders, with his tamped down hand gestures and his finger wagging in a professorial sense, is a direct result of him being part of a revolutionary movement his entire life. That literally he's the guy who goes, everybody settle down for a second, let's talk about it. Sanders is a great example of that kind of a human being. Come on, around that zone have a lot to do with the arc of his political career and who he is as a human being. And the same thing is true, Sanders supporters, of Hillary Clinton. That her not being as personable as you would like compared to Sanders' kind of, kind of older teddy bear-ish qualities, and her sounding loud to you, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, because she's talking at a rally. Everybody else, every other male candidate yelling at a rally, she raises her voice, suddenly she's shrill. That is a factor of modern sexism if I've ever seen it. There's an article in that Amanda Turkle wrote called "Hillary Clinton is the ultimate no woman," and there were parts of it that I thought were really fascinated me. And again, I will oftentimes in deference to this kind of a storyline, female candidates as a part of the inner workings of how stuff works. In the same way, by the way, that I allowed Jonathan Capehart's article as a black journalist to show up in my feed, much to the anger and disappointment of some people who disagreed with him. I think it's valuable to have those voices. Whether you agree with 100% is immaterial. We're a democracy, especially if you're a Sanders supporter. You got to be your responsibility is to be open to even more points of view. So here you go. So this Amanda Turkel's article, Hillary Clinton is the ultimate no woman. In Thursday night's Democratic debate, Hillary Clinton again found herself questioning how Bernie Sanders would turn his big ideas should he get elected president. She's done this time and time. Free college. How do we get the GOP governors to cooperate? Single-payer health care is popular with progressives, but how would he get Republicans in Congress to go along with it after the nasty Obamacare fight? This is essentially the same position Clinton found herself in 2008 when she ran against another guy with big ideas who argued the right person could change politics. I could stand up here and say, let's just get everybody together, let's get unified, the sky will open, the light will come down, celestial choirs will be singing, and everyone will know we should do the right thing and the world will be perfect, Clinton said at the time, in a dig at then-Senator Barack Obama's campaign rhetoric. Maybe I've just lived a little long, but I have no illusions about how hard this is going to be, and you're not going to wave a magic wand and have the special interests disappear. By the way, you could say that the difficulties that the president ran into the entire run of his presidency vindicate her statement during that campaign. I supported Barack Obama both candidacies. I went door to door for him, other places. I voted for him twice. I am happy I did so. However, in hindsight, Hillary Clinton was absolutely right about that aspect. And the argument that most people had with the president was that his fight was less ideological than they would have wished, and that the realities of the office, when they came to roost, were damaging to progressive ideas. I don't agree with that. I just think we live in a democracy. That's how it is sometimes. However, in that sentence, Hillary Clinton turned out to be right in that regard. This is not and this is continuing the article. This isn't a fun position to be in. It's hard, after all, to inspire people when you're telling everyone why a popular proposal isn't practical. And Clinton, predictably, has been struggling to attract idealistic progressives, especially young people who are fed up with the current system and want to see change. But it's also a position that many women do find themselves in, especially in the workplace. They are the no women, as New York Magazine writer Ann Friedman has called them. This is quoting from Ann Friedman's article. The no woman is the opposite of a yes man. She's usually not an administrative assistant or a junior employee. Most often, she's part of the leadership team in a company or particular project. And whether it's part of her official job description or not, she's the person who's there to say no. She provides a counterbalance to the creative visionary and reality check after a brain her colleagues' expectations or modify their strategies, either because it's part of her job to control budgets and keep everyone within the bounds
Yes, we do. I'm so sorry.
That's
yes, we do.
Okay, great.
It's a full line.
Oh, great. Okay. Let's get him in there.
Now back to the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back. We got a lot of callers, so let's start through them. Who do we have, Lady B? Lady B. Excellent. Hey, Joy, welcome.
Hello?
Hey, Joy, go ahead. Are you there?
Hey, Al, this is Joe. Are you talking to me, brother?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Hey, Joy.
Okay, great. I just want to make a couple points here. You know how they say Bernie's unelectable, and if he even got there, he couldn't do nothing. Well, there's one person the Republicans dislike more than Obama, and that's Hillary Clinton. Okay? So if you think the obstruction's dead now, wait till she gets in there. And Bernie's not a millionaire, and that's refreshing, because you know he's not on the take. And I'm not saying the other ones are, but I'm just saying.
You're implying it, though.
That should count for a lot more than it really does. I mean, that shows you the character of a man. He could be a millionaire like the rest of them, but he chooses not to. And that's about all I had to say, Hal.
I gotcha. Okay. Well, there you go. I appreciate that. Okay. Who else do we have, Lady B?
We have Robert from Florida about Trump.
Okay.
Hello, Robert.
Welcome.
Hey, Lady B. Hey, Hal. How you doing?
I'm good.
Hey, last week I called and we talked briefly about the great socialist experiment called the NFL.
Right.
And this week, I want to talk about the USFL and Donald Trump. I don't know if you remember, if you're old enough to remember the USFL, but
Sure.
it was a league that was actually a viable league that went into springtime where these NFL stadiums were empty and they were able to gather an audience, and they actually were a threat to baseball at the time.
Uh-huh.
But Donald Trump, in his wisdom, who was the owner of the New Jersey Generals, I believe the team was,
Uh-huh.
he decided at one point to, no, we're going against the NFL.
Right.
And then when the stadiums weren't available, he sued, and he won, but he won $1.
Yes.
He won $1, and the league folded.
That's right. If
So
anybody
I'm
wants
tired
the
of hearing how
well, if anybody also wants to yeah, absolutely. If anybody wants a great shortcut cliff notes of that, the Johnny Depp Art of the Deal movie they did on Funny or Die addresses some of this in a funny way. But yeah, continue, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so tired of the narrative that he's such a smart, astute businessman, and here he is. He was actually making money with the league in the spring, and then all of a sudden the greed of his ego got the best of him, and he folded that league.
Absolutely.
But, there's another thing. I'm on hold for a long time, and I hear a lot of people talking, and my mind always thinks and is running, and sometimes in weird directions.
Sure.
But I want to talk about this real quick, Cal. In a way, what kept George Bush from being impeached was Dick Cheney.
Yep.
Nobody wanted the second guy in charge.
Yeah.
And you know what? Maybe that could be a sell for Hillary. Say, you know what? Let's take Bernie on board as our vice president. You know what? Everyone, it's either one. For me, I'm with you. I don't care who's in front. I'm voting for them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And those parts are interchangeable for me. And I would like to see a Clinton ticket or a Clinton-Sanders ticket. I'm fine with that.
Yep.
And guess what? That would keep Hillary in check. I mean, Hillary would give Hillary more power. If Hillary would turn to him at the next debate, say, would you run with me? I guarantee you it would just it would steamroll the whole election process. And
yeah.
And I'd like to hear a comment on that. And then I'll leave you on this. You know what? If Trump's out of the race, his people don't go to the polls. They do not go to the polls because he's already damaged Bush. And Kasich and this other, and all these governors, they're only governors because they run on off-election years, presidential years. They don't win when Barack Obama's on the ticket. They like Christie. They'll do an extra election just so that no Democrats on board, so that they could actually lose a vote or lose a vote or lose faith.
Right.
So none of these governors are governors unless it's an off-election year. And Hal, listen, I gotta run, brother, but I love
appreciate
your show, and thanks for letting me talk.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. Yeah, the insofar as the USFL storyline, the amazing part that people don't realize is that it was basically the lesson learned and put into arena football, which is don't try to overstep your bounds. Just build your audience, and hopefully it will grow naturally on its own. He wasn't happy with that, and he tried to take down the NFL when he didn't have a standing or the ability to do it, and capsized an entire industry that could have been a cash cow for him for a very long time. Which is incredible if you lean that up with his business deals. And again, I highly recommend the Johnny Depp biopic, Art of the Deal. It's very funny indeed. That being said, I think he's right about the Trump voters. I think in many ways, and this is I'm sure a small segment of the Sanders voters who view themselves as purists as well, who won't vote if this is if this goes towards Hillary or what have you. To those people, good riddance. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, but don't actually. Don't pretend in any way that you are part of an informed electorate that is part of the election cycle. Okay, let's see. Let's grab another caller. We've got time in this segment.
We have Nancy.
Cool. Hi, Nancy. Welcome.
Nancy.
Hey, Hal.
Hi.
How's it going?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Boy, I've got a lot. First of all, I'm the woman who Donald referred to about asking yesterday if he was related to Hillary, because here's what I don't get about people, and I agree with you 100% about not voting for the other candidate because yours didn't win.
Right.
Anybody who does that is totally ignorant and shouldn't have the right to vote. I always tell my friends, hey, if you don't vote, your opponent wins.
Yep.
Now, you don't want these crazy, that's the way these Republicans got in charge in the first place.
Yep, absolutely.
Because people sat back and, voted for Dancing with the Stars instead.
Mm-hmm.
But,
yep.
I'm not going to pick on anybody in particular, but these definitive remarks about how I never hear you say, when I say you, I'm talking general, I never hear them say, oh, Hillary voters will vote for Bernie, but Bernie voters won't vote for Hillary. Well, I'll tell you what, Donald, because he was making definitive remarks about how we're not going to win if it's Bernie and all this stuff, and how all the people he knows, well, guess what? I could counter that with all the people I know. None of them want to vote for Hillary, but hey, if the time comes where she wins, and that's a big if, I'll vote for her, and so will all the people I talk with, because we know what's at stake.
Mm-hmm.
The Democrats are the ones with the brains. Unfortunately, they don't know how to fight. But here's what, Bernie has given explanation as to how he would pay for things and stuff. And you know what? I haven't gone online and looked anything up or anything. I haven't heard Hillary say anything about how she's going to, do her program.
Her budgetary proposals are on her website or whatever, and they are, for whether you agree with them or not, materially, more fleshed out. It's that simple. That's not to mean that they're more valuable or whatever, but they are more fleshed out.
Right.
Because she's running on effectively that she has a plan, so she won. I think what Donald was referring to, and I see this online myself, is a lot more Bernie or nothing remarks. I see that more in social media.
Those Bernie brobots or whatever they're called. I'm sure Hillary has her faction that's going to, it's got to be Hillary and all this. But I'll tell you, I'm a woman. I'm here in Illinois. I'm Hillary's age. I resent the, fact that they want to say, oh, you've got to vote for her because she's a woman. That's baloney. That would be like, well, okay, who are you going to vote for? There's 5 guys to choose from. Who are you going to vote for? Just because they have a
right,
whatever.
The proper genitalia.
But,
understood.
Right.
Yeah.
But, the only thing that the difference in Bernie and Hillary, and to me, the mistake he's making is not bringing forth the why, certain things don't work and why they're not, when he says about, we'd pay for, we'd give free college. Well, we had free college in this country. He should be bringing up all the facts that everything that went on before Reagan. And Hillary, she should get rid of Bill because he's not doing her any good. He did the same thing with the president, and look where it got him.
Yeah, I don't think Clinton is good at campaigning for his wife. I think he's an excellent campaigner for everybody else, but I think it's almost like he has too much dog in the fight, and it overwhelms him. And I think he gets harsh, which is not part of his charm. That being said, the guy is welcome to defend his wife as vehemently as he feels. Whether whether it reaches the voter or not is the question. And I think there is value for our country on a gender level of having a female president for the first time in our history. You may or may not think it's Hillary this time around, but I think that point of view for a country that has had a chain of males since its inception, there is a perspective that women's experience would alter in our exchange that is valuable. And so I do think it is important as a point of view. It doesn't guarantee. I mean, Margaret Thatcher, is not a great indicator of the best traits of womanhood, for example, but it certainly altered the flow of and granted, England's different as well because they've run they've effectively had a figurehead queen before, so their view of women in high position is different than ours. Ours has been election based the entire time. However, at the same time, we've always picked a male. So I do think there's value in that. We'll be back right after this. More calls, 773-763-9278. If Secretary of State Clinton was smarter about foreign policy votes, then she'd have won. You mean the Iraq vote was the main disqualifier for her in that? Fair point, I suppose. However, even after that vote, the president did choose her as a Secretary of State, and she was not known for advising a lot of of military adventurism, even in regards to Libya and Gaddafi. She didn't always end up, just simply being the person who, in the case of, Gaddafi going, we should just Saddam this situation again, Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can have somebody who, in the terms of Sanders, effectively, when it comes to the Iraq or the Patriot Act, did protest votes. He would lose nothing in Vermont, nothing as an independent senator, didn't lose caucus spacing, was protected by the Democrats in those areas. So his vote against the Iraq War and the Patriot Act was a protected one. He'd lose no station because of it. Whereas in Hillary's case, recanting that vote and going, that's a lesson learned, has value. I do. That can't be, can't be the same. And being called out for it repeatedly also creates, a direct, a storm around it. Mm-hmm. And the only reason Hillary is compared to them is because, Margaret Thatcher
1 minute
was, as an active, world politician, one of the most powerful female leaders on the planet at that point, was, nose to nose with Reagan on a lot of things, and the right wing considers him very important. So that's mainly why. It's there aren't a lot of people to compare. Golda Meir is a great example. That we're seeing eye to eye with the other top leaders. Okay, we're coming back. Sorry.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back, listeners.
Let's take Tim.
Excellent. Welcome, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
Hello, Hal.
Hey, yeah, go ahead.
Here's a question for everybody who's fighting between the Democratic candidates.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go to war, don't vote, because Republicans will go to war.
Right.
And specifically, yes, I'm new to social media, and I'm on Twitter, and I saw some things with you with Randy Rhoads.
Right.
But the amount of stuff coming on my feed is outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are getting paid for this stuff is really, really.
Right.
It's amazing to me.
Yeah, it's not surprising that, that's where a lot of those ad dollars these days actually go, because the return on investment as far as voter when it comes to seeing a commercial anymore is very low. However, people getting involved in social media, that can drive votership. So that's where a lot of the pressure is. So I'm very, I just recently, there was some guy who was kind of questioning, either statements of Hillary's and or Bernie's from pretending to sort of be from a Democratic point of view. And he was, he's got a picture of a monkey and no name. And I'm like, that's a troll to me. Put your name and your face on there, then we'll have a conversation. And that's increasingly difficult in social media. So you're absolutely right. That's a major fact. You have to take everything you hear, especially on the web and on Twitter, with a grain of salt, and understand that this is not texting friends. There's no context. But yeah, continue. Go ahead. Is he there? Do we have him? Okay. Anyways, appreciate the call. Let's grab another one.
We lost him.
Sorry. That's okay. Let's grab another one.
We have Paul from Seattle.
Cool. Hey, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi there. How's it doing?
Good. Go ahead.
Hal, you said something that I think it was last hour. Yes, last hour you said something that was kind of interesting. That on the Republican side, the closer that you get to some actually concrete solutions, the
less interested the voters are, the less popular you'll become. Absolutely, and I think yeah.
And it's as though the Republican side, in general, they're almost nihilists.
Yes.
I mean, really, they're against just to be against.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's clannish. It's war just for the sake of war.
Sure.
Whether they agree with it, they might agree with it. And I think in some ways it's because they keep talking about how they want freedom and liberty, freedom and liberty. I think that what that is because once you start having solutions, that means, well, now you actually have to do something.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't have the freedom to do nothing anymore.
Oh, that's why they can't
you
handle
have the freedom to do nothing. It's kind of like the Bundy.
Right,
the Bundys out in Oregon.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. And it's and you look at Flint, like the reason they're having such a hard time dealing with Flint is because the solution is government regulation. The solution is water purification. The solution is putting a budget together, paying for new pipes, making sure that other communities aren't poisoned by the exact same toxins, and that takes work, and they're not interested. Once you get away from the realm, even Trump's talking about how much his wall costs turns off his own voters. Because they're like, oh, no, I got to pay for it. That's right. Absolutely.
That's why he had to say somebody else is going to pay for it. It has to be some of this obscure, nebulous thing. And, again, when we talk about Hillary and Bernie, now this thing, the number one thing, the number one issue, sort of the all-encompassing issue is health care.
Sure.
It's got to be. Because that's the one thing that is absolutely breaking this country.
Mm-hmm.
And on the one hand, they're both right. On the one hand, Bernie is just coming out and saying we need single payer.
Yep.
Hillary darn well knows this issue. She very well knows this issue. She was in the debate. Now, what's the interesting thing is that now that we have Obamacare, and for all of the screaming and complaining and hollering on the right, and frankly, all the glowing and cooing done on the left, Obamacare really didn't change anything about the fundamental structure of our health insurance and financing system. It did a couple of things to get more people into the system, but it's like we got people out of the water into the lifeboat, but the lifeboat has a hole in it. So it still has to be tweaked. So for Hillary to say, well, single payer is unrealistic, I'm interested to see what it is that she's going to tweak about Obamacare. And this is the thing that most people don't realize is that Obamacare is what the Republicans offered as an alternative to Hillary Care.
Well, the mandate was there's certainly a huge chunks of that. The part that the Republicans have a problem with and why they voted as many times as they had to repeal it and why they keep talking about repeal and replace as opposed to fixing it or even claiming any part of it is because effectively there were poison pills in there from a Democratic standpoint in a good way that eventually drive insurance towards single payer. Those are all laid out in a fairly direct line over the course of Obamacare, and a lot of it has to do with caps on growth and the things that were getting way out of hand, kicking people off plans for small infractions. You've got cancer now, but we link that to the acne you didn't tell us about in high school, therefore we're not covering your treatment, that kind of stuff. That's hardly a small shift in how insurance was run in this country. And the highest number of bankruptcies in the country were all medically based before Obamacare came in. And it's been a drastic shift. It is absolutely a step in the direction of single payer, and it is meant to be so. The president and his entire team structurally worked on, here's what they can accept, but we're also going to lace this with things that will eventually get us where we want through overreach by the insurance companies, and that's exactly what's happening. The main tenet of, in dealing with single payer from an Obamacare standpoint is that once certain markers aren't met, and there are already 2 of them have already cleared, I think there's 4 more. Once these markers aren't met, if a state comes up with their own state run, let's say Washington State has a single payer system, and if you don't live in Washington, you can't use it. That's effectively the problem. Because you can't buy across state lines. This is something even the Republicans are now talking about getting rid of, which is amazing because it's such a briar patch in the regards to, sort of worrying about this aspect of it. But let's say Washington has one, Massachusetts has one, Illinois finally comes up with one, let's say, as a single payer for their own citizens. Obamacare lays groundwork for you to be able to buy into single payers run by individual states, meaning nonprofit single-payer-based insurance, but multiple systems instead of one federal system, which is, if it has problems, are entrenched and harder to change, and through congressional gridlock could be locked into sucking, like a lot of the messing around with the exchanges that Nevada and other states have done. to make it seem worse than it is. The states that take advantage of it, who actually do create a good system, you will be able to buy into those as single-payer nonprofit systems from wherever you are in the country. So instead of having one federal system to choose from, you'll have maybe a dozen states you'll be able to buy into. Eventually, the unification of most of the Democrats that I know would jump at the chance that rather than pay a profit-based insurance company, buy into a state-based nonprofit, which benefits the tax dollars of that particular state over time. That was always the plan with Obamacare. That's what she's talking about, ratcheting up towards single payer. That's all, and that's exactly why the Republicans keep vainly trying to repeal it and promising to get rid of it every single time, even though it would kick 30 million people off, because they know that's where it's headed. That's the essence of what her growth to universal coverage is about. It's what Jackie Schechtner and I were talking about for 5 years, on Steph's show and whatnot. It's why I read the Affordable Care Act from cover to cover when everybody else was wagging it around saying no one has read this. The reason the Republicans hate it is because it is a beeline to single payer over time, and they know that if there is a start again, a fight all about it to get Medicare for all, they can shut that down before it even starts. That's the belief on the right. And that's what she's referring to. And what Bernie's referring to is that it makes sense mechanically. And he's absolutely right. But it's not going to happen. Not that way. Because there are too many entrenched Republicans and too many entrenched blue dog Democrats who will who will ride the brake on it. That's just the reality. We got a couple more callers after we come back from the break. I appreciate the calls, and then we'll have the happy ending. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT, AM 820. Look, to your point about troops on the ground and boots on the ground and involvement of the military or whatever, the reality is that John Kerry, to his credit, ran on the concept that terrorism is a law and order issue, not a war issue. It's not a military issue. And he's absolutely right. And that's where effectively the Republicans jumped on him with both feet in that circumstance. They ate him alive for that idea because they thought he was undervaluing the threat, and they used fear to drive everybody, in their direction. I know. It just zips by. Yeah. Mitchell, that is my primary point, that unanimous holds are anti-democratic, period.
One minute.
Excellent. And how many calls do we have still, just so I know?
We have about 2 more callers.
Okay, great. All right, we'll get to them right away. Who are they and what's the order? Do we know real quick?
It's we have Nashville Carl, and then we have Ted.
Okay, let's grab Ted first, and then
he wants to talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ted wants to what? Okay.
He wanted to talk about. I guess we don't need Bush nor Clinton's.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. All right.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back. We got a couple more callers, and then we'll get to our happy ending. Let's go to Ted on, I don't know which line he's on, but let's go to Ted.
He's on too.
Excellent. Hey, Ted.
Hi, Ted.
Welcome.
Hey, I have to tell you, I should have gotten 3 hours of college credit listening to you for the last hour. I just wanted to say one simple thing.
Sure.
We may as well just plan ahead and put the Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton ticket together now.
Mm-hmm.
We have 30 days to get the job done. There are more families qualified to be president than Clintons or Bushes or Carters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my interest, to get Bernie Sanders, who talks like FDR, elected and put everybody to work in the old CCC camps or the WPA. And after 30 days, if they don't work real hard and earn their dollars, they get cut from the program. I think that would just jumpstart the entire United States. I'll get off and listen to you.
Gotcha.
Thanks for the time.
Absolutely. I know for a fact that Sanders wouldn't force work for benefits. That would be completely antithetical to his belief system. As a matter of fact, that's more of a Republican situation. I think like community activism, and I think the rebuilding America. I think the Peace Corps. I think getting tax credit for for working in any way in infrastructure rebuilding or the like. All those plumbers that showed up in Flint to change out the pipes there was a beautiful thing. I know he wouldn't be for cutting off people's money or rolls or support or anything like that once that happened. It just it won't work out. That being said, disqualifying Clinton because of her last name because she married a man with that name, and he chose to run for president, is I wouldn't hold that against Bob Dole's wife either. I think there's something to be said about not having our government pass from father to son. So we, the idea that we had, 2 George Bushes, and then maybe a Jeb running, that makes sense to me as maybe knock it off a little bit because, democracy was effectively set up to run interference from families passing it down from father to son. That being said, anybody who's qualified should be allowed to run in this country free and clear, and we have the every right to not vote for them. I like Bernie, but I won't hold Hillary's name against her. Let's go to Nashville. Carl, I think he's waiting on the line, our last caller of the day, to bring us into our happy ending. Yeah. Hey, Carl, welcome. Are you there?
Well, I tell you what, I do come with. Can you hear me?
Yep, there you are. Yeah. All good.
Oh, you hear me?
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, I'll leave you with some words of comfort here.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when my wife had high anxiety about the last Democratic election between Hillary Clinton and the nominating process between Hillary Clinton and Senator Obama.
Uh-huh.
And I remember the trolls and everything when they were saying that they wouldn't vote for Barack Obama if Hillary Clinton didn't win the nomination.
Right.
And I looked at my wife and I told her, I said, listen, I said, let me explain something to you. There's no woman the age of Hillary Clinton that wouldn't vote for President Barack Obama or a Democrat because of what they went through with illegal abortions, and knowing women that was friends, relatives that may have been killed or rendered sterile because of back alley abortions.
Right.
I said that issue alone will make sure that those voters would vote for President Obama. She said, what about all these women out there talking about hell no Obama and this, that, and I said, those are trolls. Those are Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
And we're having the same thing
I agree.
going on. The Bernie bros, most of those guys are Republican trolls.
Yep.
They're not for Bernie Sanders. They're not for Hillary Clinton. They're trying to make mischief within the Democratic small d process with the Democratic Party. This is what's going on. There's not one Democrat that would want to go back to the 8 years of George W. Bush just the failure of leadership during that time, the blunders of taking us to war unnecessarily. So no Democrat would ever say, I'm not going to vote. So all the discussion of, hey, guys, you got to get out there and vote. I mean, that's good to say that. And continue to say that, to keep voting, down ticket, down ballot, get in there and vote. Continue to say it. And I'm not saying that that's a waste of time. But what I am saying is that you're not going to reach the people that don't want to be reached. And what I'm saying is this. The people that's going to vote for Hillary Clinton are going to vote for Sanders. The people that are going to vote for Sanders are going to vote for Hillary Clinton. These trolls, these Bernie bros and things like that, those are all Republicans.
I agree.
They are. They really are Republicans just trying to make mischief.
And I don't even think it's just mischief. Them are paid as such. This is part of the psyop of modern campaigns, affecting. See this? You go to anybody who wants to make a list. To manage social media and how to connect with people online and how not to drive away all your subscribers and stuff like that. How do I connect with people? How do we build a bigger coalition? They think that's a way of running an actual